I'm sure your teacher frequently asks you to write the date on the top of the page when you start writing something in your notebook. But do you know why your teacher asks you to do so? As in, how are dates significant to us? Allow me to give you an example so that this becomes clearer to you. Suppose you are writing questions and answers on this chapter, that is what, when, how and where, on the 1st of January 2022. Months later, your teacher now asks you to produce before her whatever you have written on that chapter. Now, how will you find out what you have written on that chapter on that particular date? You will simply move to the page where you have written the date January 1, 2022. And in this way, it will be easier for you to find out what you have done on that day. So in this sense, we can understand that dates help us to keep track of various events that happen in a particular day or over a period of time. And in fact, dates are also very crucial to us in the sense that dates help us to mark a period of time over which various changes might happen, over which different events might take place. With this in mind, we have to talk about how dates came into being. Now, can you tell me how this concept of using dates and assigning dates to any particular day came into being? Because it cannot come out of nowhere. It cannot happen that one person on one fine morning suddenly decided to start using dates. So it is the concept of date and how it came into being that we will be focusing on in the first part of our lesson. So let us now find out what are dates and how this concept of or how this practice of dating came into being. Whenever we talk about dates, the birth of Jesus Christ plays a very important role. But here you must be questioning that how is Jesus Christ, who was the founder of Christianity, relevant when it comes to marking dates? This is because the birth of Jesus Christ is used to mark two distinct periods in history. What are these periods that we are talking about? Since we consider the birth of Jesus Christ as the center point or the focal point, the time that came before the birth of Christ came to be known as BC or before Christ. So we have the birth of Jesus Christ as the focal point and the time that preceded it is known as BC or before Christ. And the time period that comes after the birth of Christ is known as AD. AD in Latin refers to Anno Domini or in the year of the Lord. That is, this is the year when it is considered that Jesus Christ was born, and the period that follows the birth of Christ is known as AD or Anno Domini. Now this is a way in which traditionally we divide time into two periods. On the one hand we have BC. Now when it comes to counting the years that happened in BC, we count backwards. Suppose someone was born in 200 BC and that person lived for 100 years. So that person will live from 200 BC to 100 BC. When it comes to BC, we count backwards, and after counting backwards, we come to 0 or 1 AD, which is the birth of Christ. And the time period that follows the birth of Christ comes to be known as AD. So whenever someone asks you the year you are living through, it means that many years have passed since the birth of Jesus Christ. If someone asks you your birth year and you reply 1999, it means that you were born 1999 years after the birth of Jesus Christ. Now when it comes to talking about events that happened in BC, we generally write the date and it is followed by BC to denote that it happened before the birth of Christ. But we don't do so in the case of AD, as in we just write the date and the date is not followed by AD. Now when we talk about this type of categorization of time in terms of BC and AD, this is a traditional method. Now, what has this concept of timing evolved to, and how do we now categorize time? Let us try to find answers to this question. The birth of Jesus Christ, as we just talked about, is the focal point when we have to divide time in terms of two distinct phases. Now, instead of BC, we use the term BCE. What does BCE stand for? BCE stands for Before Common Era. And the AD or Anno Domini has been replaced by CE or Common Era. Whenever you see some kind of a change, you must definitely question why the change happened, as in what caused the change. Now you must be also wondering why instead of BC, we now use BCE. Because whenever we talk about BC, we refer to the birth of Christ. We refer to Christianity as a whole. Now, in order to avoid any connection with a particular religion, Christianity to be specific, we now use Before Common Era. So we don't use before Christ, we now use Before Common Era. And when we talk about AD, we also refer to Jesus Christ as the Lord. AD refers to the year in which Jesus Christ was born as the Lord. So, in the same way, in order to avoid mentioning Jesus Christ as the Lord all the time when we talk about different phases in history, we now use Common Era. So now we have the Before Common Era on the one hand and the Common Era on the other hand. So this is how we denote different phases in history. This is how we come to understand when such and such things happened in history. Without dates, you will never be able to situate when something happened. And if you don't understand when such and such events happened, you will not be able to understand this entire process holistically. Our previous lesson introduced us to the various sources of history, and it is in that lesson where we talked about manuscripts, inscriptions, and archaeological findings. The beginning of this lesson was devoted to understanding how the concept of dating came into being. So we can now understand when such and such things happened in history, and it is by the virtue of this system of dating that we get to understand this. Now, when it comes to talking about people who lived in the ancient period, a very important question that must be coming to our minds is that where did these people live? From the archaeological excavations, we get to know about the lives of these people. Now, whenever we come to talking about people who lived through different phases of history, the geographical locations in which those people lived also played a major role in shaping the course of their lives. So let us now find out where people lived and how societies came into being. Since forever, rivers have played a major role in human lives. And in fact, rivers can be considered the point of origin of human lives, because it is on and around several river banks that human civilizations, human settlements came into being, and the water of these rivers provided sustenance to these human beings. River gives human beings something without which no animal, no human can live, and yes, it is water. Without the water that is provided to humans and animals by rivers, people cannot live. So this is one of the most crucial points why human settlements came into being on and around the river banks. From this, we can also understand why river banks played a major role in the evolution of human beings towards forming settlements. How is it so? The rivers always make the surrounding river valley very fertile, and these fertile lands are very well suited for the pursuit of agriculture. So when there is fertile land that is well suited for the practice of agriculture, people start settling there, people start growing their own food there. So this in a way causes evolution and change in the way in which humans have lived. So rivers, along with providing water to humans and animals, also make the surrounding lands very fertile. Along with this, different animals also used to come to the river to drink water. Now, whenever people were living through primitive times or even through ancient times, they used to hunt these animals that used to come to the rivers. So in this way, people also gathered their food. These rivers were also home to many fish, and these fish were also used by people in order to sustain themselves. Now, rivers also played a major role in human lives in the sense that during the ancient times, transportation was not possible in the ways we can think of these days. These days we have aeroplanes, cars, buses, trains, but these modes of communication did not evolve in the ancient times. In the ancient times, when people had to travel from one region to the other, they had to do so either on foot or by rivers. So in this way, rivers have constituted a very essential part, or probably the quintessential part of human existence since times immemorial. This map shows you some of the most ancient and significant civilizations that have come into being. Here we have the Egyptian civilization that grew on the Nile Valley. Then we have the Mesopotamian civilization that grew on the Tigris-Euphrates Valley. Then coming to the subcontinent itself, we have the Indus Valley civilization that grew on the Indus-Saraswati Valley. And finally, here we come to the ancient civilization of China that grew on the Huanghe Valley. So can you see a very common point among all these ancient civilizations? Yes, all these civilizations grew around river valleys. So can you understand how crucial rivers were when it came to forming human settlements and when it came to forming huge civilizations as a whole? Now let us come to the subcontinent itself. Here, for several thousands of years, people lived near the banks of the river Narmada. On this map, you can locate river Narmada. It flows across the modern-day Indian states of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. So aren't you interested to know more about the people who lived on the banks of the Narmada river? Let us now find out about the people who lived on the banks of this river. Some people who lived on the banks of the river Narmada were skilled hunter-gatherers. You must be knowing by now that hunter-gatherers were people who used to hunt animals and gather different forest produces for their own sustenance. They used to hunt animals like cattle, deer, which were easier to hunt, and at the same time they also used to gather forest produces like fruits, honey or different types of plants that they used to eat. So these people were skilled hunter-gatherers, and at the same time these people were nomadic. They led lives like nomads. Who are nomads? Nomads are those people who move from one region to another in search of food. But why don't the nomads settle somewhere? This is because if the nomads settled and stayed in one place for too long, they would have exhausted all the plants and animals that were there that they used for their own food. Which is why, in order to get food, in order to get water, the nomads used to travel from one region to another. Now, these hunter-gatherers, these people who used to lead nomadic lives, slowly started forming settlements. And with the formation of settlements now came into being the pursuit of agriculture. How did agriculture develop? Because when people started staying near the river banks, they started growing their own crop on the fertile lands. And by growing crops, these people were able to grow food for themselves. So this can be considered the fountainhead or the point of origin of the pursuit of agriculture. And this pursuit of agriculture developed in many areas with the formation of permanent human settlements. Let us now go to the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. People who lived near the Sulayman and the Kirthar hills were the first to grow crops. Now, which were the crops that they first grew? They grew crops in the likes of barley and wheat. And as long as 8,000 years ago, these crops were grown by the people who lived near the Sulayman and the Kirthar hills that are now found in the present day country of Pakistan. With the formation of permanent settlements and with the pursuit of agriculture, people now started domesticating animals. They domesticated animals like sheep, goat, cattle. Now, why was the domestication of animals of any importance to these people? Previously, they used to hunt animals to get food. Now, when people started staying on and around the river valleys, they started growing their own crops. These crops were in turn used as food by these people. Simultaneously with that, these people started domesticating harmless animals which provided them milk, meat, butter. Animals like sheep also grow fur on them, and the fur was used by people to make clothes for themselves. So can you understand how important this domestication of animals was following the pursuit of agriculture? As a logical continuation of the pursuit of agriculture and the domestication of animals, people now started forming permanent settlements. That is to say, from being hunter-gatherers, people now started living settled lives. This is a depiction of settled life in villages. They used to build small huts for themselves, and around these huts they used to pursue agriculture. So this can be considered the point of beginning of settled life. So can you understand how human life as a whole also underwent through periods and phases of growth and evolution? Because nowadays we don't hunt and gather our foods. We stay in developed permanent settlements. And the beginning of the settlements that we now live in today can be considered this. This is the moment when people gave up their traditional practice of hunting gathering and started pursuing agriculture and forming settlements, which then took the shape of huge civilizations. Now I am sure whenever we talk about the pursuit of agriculture and cultivation, the first agricultural crop that comes to your mind must be rice. In fact, rice is a staple food of around 1/3 of the population of the entire world, and it is mostly consumed in continents like Africa and Asia. In fact, rice is the third most produced agricultural product in the entire world, following sugar and maize. So you can understand how important the cultivation of rice is. Now when it comes to the scenario of the Indian subcontinent, rice is said to have been first cultivated in the north of the Vindhyas. On this map you can see the Vindhya mountain range that runs parallel to the river Narmada. The Vindhya mountain range is a chain of discontinuous hills and plateaus and ridges that spans across central India. Now this is the place, the north of the Vindhyas, where rice was first cultivated in the Indian subcontinent. Previously we have learnt about how the rivers made the surrounding river valley very fertile. So it goes without saying that the Narmada river valley is also very fertile, which is why it was the best best place for the cultivation of rice that first happened in the Indian subcontinent many hundreds and thousands of years ago. So what did we learn here? Here we traced the trajectory of human beings who initially lived as hunter-gatherers, and slowly, by going through various phases of changes, evolution and development, they now started forming settled communities. So in these settled communities, people now started having their own houses. They no longer lived nomadic lives and moved from one region to another in search of food. People started forming settled communities. Now these people also started pursuing agriculture, as we have already talked about. So this is a major and a very crucial change in the human history itself, because the formation of settled communities also led to the formation of subsequent human civilizations. Let us now find out more about the importance of settled communities, as in how settled communities could be considered the point of origin of human societies and human civilizations. How this trajectory from being hunter-gatherers to forming settled communities also contributed to the development of the subcontinent holistically. So it is time to find out about one of the most ancient and largest civilizations that the Indian subcontinent has ever witnessed. We are talking about the Indus Valley civilization. Around 4,700 years ago, two major cities by the names of Mohenjo-daro and Harappa flourished on the tributaries of the river Indus. The river Indus flows across the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent, and Mohenjo-daro and Harappa were two major cities that flourished on the banks of this river. We have already discussed at great length how the river valleys were the places where human civilizations came into being for the first time, and the Indus Valley civilization speaks to this fact. Mohenjo-daro and Harappa are cities that can now be found in the present day country of Pakistan, and in the present day India. This extent of the Indus Valley civilization spans across the northwestern part of the country. Now, when did this civilization exist? It existed between 3000 BCE to 1500 BCE. The Indus Valley civilization has been one of the most developed, one of the most advanced civilizations that came into being in the Indian subcontinent, and not just the Indian subcontinent but in the entire world. The Indus Valley civilization, you should definitely remember, was essentially an urban civilization. This was a civilization where technological developments were taking place. Now, by technological developments, we do not refer to the technological developments that are happening in today's world. In Indus Valley civilization, technological advancements were happening of a different kind. In this civilization, roads were properly built. The houses were also well built. This is one of the most glorious and powerful civilizations that emerged as an important center of trade and commerce. The very fact that the Indus Valley civilization emerged as an important center of trade and commerce is also because of its location. Given that it was found around the Indus and its tributaries, this river played a very crucial role in contributing to the development of trade activities in this civilization. Like all things that rise to glory and come to an end, the Indus Valley civilization also ruined over time. This civilization met its end because of natural disasters and few other reasons. These reasons, that is the reasons that led to the decline of the Indus Valley civilization, are matters of debates and discussions. In this regard, what we have to keep in mind is that the Indus Valley civilization declined around circa 1500 BCE. So the decline of this huge civilization led to different changes in the face of the subcontinent. Now what we talked about was a major civilization, a river valley civilization in the northwestern part of the Indian subcontinent. Let us time travel and move a few centuries ahead and see what we can find in the eastern part of the subcontinent. About 2500 years ago, cities also developed on the banks of the river Ganga. This map shows you the river Ganga and its tributaries. Now, a point that we have been harping upon all along is that the river valleys were very fertile. And it is for this reason that civilizations came into being on and around these rivers. Now, the Gangetic plain is also very fertile, and it continues to provide home to millions of people even today. The river Ganga plays a crucial role in shaping the lives of the people of the present-day Indian states of Bihar, West Bengal. So on this map you could locate Ganga and its tributaries, and this is the Gangetic plain, and here you can see how cities developed by the banks of river Ganga and its tributaries. The first period of urbanization gave birth to the Indus Valley civilization, as we just discussed. Now the second period of urbanization gave birth to the Ganges civilization. So this is the place where the Ganges civilization came into being. Now while this Ganges civilization came into being, it also gave birth to many important cities and kingdoms. Let us find out about the places that flourished in the Ganges civilization. To the south of the river Ganga, a very important region came into being, and this was known as Magadha. Magadha in present India falls in the state of Bihar. Now Magadha was one of the 16 Mahajanapadas in ancient India. What were these Mahajanapadas? These Mahajanapadas were 16 kingdoms or oligarchic republics that came into being in ancient India. Now these Mahajanapadas also emerged during the second period of urbanization, and when these Mahajanapadas came into being, to the south of the Ganges now emerged the region of Magadha. Magadha has been a very important place in ways more than one, and Magadha's importance lasted for many centuries. Now let me ask you a question before proceeding with this lesson. Which region flourished to the south of the river Ganga in ancient India? Will you be able to help me with an answer to this question? Was it Magadha, Harappa or Mohenjo-daro? Well, the correct answer is Magadha. Magadha, the region of Magadha flourished to the south of the river Ganga in ancient India, and it was one of the 16 Mahajanapadas. Now the strategic position of Magadha with regard to the river Ganga played a major role in shaping its history. How is it so? This is because the Ganga river valley enabled Magadha to gain control over communication and trade across the river. Now as we learnt that Magadha was one of the 16 Mahajanapadas, which means that Magadha was a hub of trade and commercial activities. It was a powerful and a dominant region in ancient India. And by the virtue of its power, its influence, Magadha now got to control communication and trade that happened across river Ganga and its tributaries. Along with this, many powerful rulers ruled this region. They also set up their kingdoms in the Ganga river valley. So this speaks to how important the Ganga river valley was, and this also establishes that it was only because of the presence of the river Ganga and its tributaries that this place flourished, that this place gained prominence and importance. With this, we come to an end of our discussion on the system of dating and the formation of river valley civilizations. Now, the system of dating introduced us to a very important thing. Here, we got to know how different phases in history are marked. On the one hand, we previously used BC and AD to mark two distinct phases of time. Now we use BCE or before Common Era and CE or Common Era. Now when we talk about people who lived in the ancient period, people who lived through different phases of history, we have to take into account the geographical locations. From this, we now understood that various civilizations came into being on and around the river banks because of reasons more than one. The rivers contributed to better living of the people who lived around it, which is why we took into account two river valley civilizations, which were the Indus Valley civilization and the Ganga civilization to be specific. Now in a subsequent lesson, we will find out about the naming of the country that we live in. We will raise a series of questions in this lesson, which we will try to answer in a subsequent lesson. Why is the country India called so? Why and from where do we get this name India? From where do we get this name Bharat as well? These are some of the discussions that we will be pursuing in our subsequent lesson. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon. You can also register for free at deltastep.com or download the DeltaStep app to learn one-to-one with our amazing teachers or to get access to all our 5,000 plus amazing videos as per your school syllabus. Master each topic with our adaptive practice technology. Get million plus questions with step-by-step solutions and unlimited mock tests. Get all your doubts resolved instantly. Learn via games and win amazing prizes like PlayStations and iPads. So at DeltaStep, learning is not just fun and easy, it's rewarding too. So register for free now.